start off with that because I've been to a few of these creative mornings before and everyone's like really slick and cool and makes these like beautiful PowerPoints. And that's not what you can expect today. So I'm not a graphic designer. Who am I? My background is in the legal industry. I am qualified to be a lawyer, just don't wanna. So I graduated with my law degree. I spent a year in the Queensland District Court as a judge's associate. And then I quit in a blaze of glory. And now I am a writer. Oh, yeah, I'm not as cool as Patricia Highsmith. But I'm a writer, and so for me that means two things. I freelance for money. I specialize in interview content. I write for a bunch of different magazines and a lot of online publications. And as you heard, I'm working on my first book, which is called Eggshell Skull, and it's a memoir about my year as a judge's associate, but more broadly it's about sexism in the justice system. So when I say burn bridges, like, buckle up, get ready. And the other thing I do, so that's in my head I have 3 tracks that run parallel of what I spend most of my weeks doing. So I have my freelance writing, I'm working on my first book, and then the third thing, of course, is Hot Chicks with Big Brains. So as you heard, I'll just tell you a little bit more about it quickly. Hot Chicks with Big Brains started about 2.5 years ago as this like real weird little pokey project where I was convincing successful women to let me into their homes. And Anna was on board since the beginning. And I would go and speak to women, not just about their like careers and their success, but like specifically our logo is a Venn diagram, and I would talk to them about the overlap, like that tiny little overlap between their like style and sense of self and their employment. It was like that niche. But then over the years it's gained a little bit of traction, and as it's been growing, our team have grown, and now we have this magazine that keeps selling out, like what up? And now we do a lot of events and a whole lot of other really exciting things that will probably come up later in my speech. So, Taboo. Jacinta actually came to me like maybe a year ago and was like, yeah, and was like, do you want to do a Creative Mornings? I was like, yeah, cool, sure, whatever. Looked at the list of topics, and it just so happened that I took 10 trips last year. I was barely in Brisbane. And then I asked to see the list of topics for 2017, and I was like, Taboo, shotgun. And then I sat down and thought about what I've seen at previous Creative Mornings and the ones that I thought were super, super good. And they were the ones that had lessons that I could actually take away for my creative practice. And so with that in mind, I've split today's talk into like sort of 3 smaller subtopics, which are 3 different types of taboos. Cannibalism, sex, and death. Yay! Just bear with me. My friends and I were brainstorming what even is taboo, like really taboo. Like spying on your neighbors is like a creepy thing to do, but it's not like a full-on cultural taboo. And like most of the things we think of when we think about what is taboo come under the heading of sex, and cannibalism and death are really the only other 2 things that are like broad concepts that are actually taboo. So I'm going to get started with cannibalism. Oh, this is so pixelated. All right, okay, here we go. Cannibalism, the practice of eating the flesh of one's own species. This is a funky graph where Google supposedly tracks the use of the word cannibalism over time. I don't know how they knew how much people were talking about cannibalism in 1810, which you can see over here on the left. But then, of course, it spikes a lot more recently, and I'm not going to talk about why that is. So that's what cannibalism actually means. The lesson that I think we can learn from why people are afraid of the concept of cannibalism is something that I call creative cannibalism. More recently, and I mean like in the last 4 to 6 months, I've become in a position in the writing community where people ask me questions as though I am some receptacle of any knowledge whatsoever. And one of the repeated concerns and questions and things that people come to me about is, why am I even writing this? What do I have that's original to say? We live in 2017, it's the 21st century. What could I possibly be adding to the conversation that hasn't already been said? What am I doing that is original and unique? And that's a lesson that can be applied to a whole, well, like every single creative pursuit. This fear and this inhibition to actually get started with something because we feel like it's not reinventing the wheel. And so what I want to talk about is this breaking through this idea of creative cannibalism, because anything that stops you from actually just getting started with a project is no bueno. And so the perfect example for this is hot chicks with big brains. One of the reasons that it was so absurdly niche and specific for so long was because I was so terrified of just starting another girl gang, of just creating another indie magazine that would go for 1, maybe 2 issues and then fizzle out. And in hindsight, I think that fear of being a creative cannibal and not having any original ideas, not only did that stop me from creating and starting Hot Chicks with Big Brains much earlier, but I look back at some of the women who I was so fortunate to be able to interview, and the questions I asked them were so random and fucking weird and specific, and I'm like, what are you thinking? Anyway, my fear of not somehow absolutely standing out from the pack, my fear of doing one sliver of a facet of a thing that had already been done in at least one other place, was really stopping me from being able to reach my creative potential. When what I have found since is that as long as you can just get started, once you jump off the starting block, each of us is such a different human being. Unless you're really talented at identity fraud, it's not going to be the same as anyone else's. People in the startup and entrepreneurial spheres talk about the fact that we hear all the time that you need to be creating a product that's filling a gap or solving a problem, that it needs to be this brand new thing and really unique. But one thing I've learned is that if you never start, if you can't get past these inhibitions that are stopping you from starting that new project or going forward with that new vision, you're never going to be able to grow it into something that's unique. You're not going to get feedback from your customers. You're not going to get people in your community giving you little bits of information along the way that let you listen to them and grow the project based on feedback. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that also, I feel like probably what you're expecting me to say now is that every human being is special and unique and like a snowflake, but it's not really true. I feel like this saying that everyone is special is an oxymoron. You can't have everyone be special because then nobody is special. And so the mantra that I like to live my life by instead is that everyone poops. And I believe this so wholeheartedly, and it's something that I come back to all the time, that I nearly made it the first of my 3 topics, because all kinds of bodily functions are also taboo. But the reason I put this here is because regardless of what your profession or focus area is, if you think of the one person who is maybe like your idol or your hero in that profession, or someone who mentors you, someone you really look up to, they poop. So I'm a writer, and I'm a feminist writer, so I think of Joan Didion. That's a little bit different because she just chain smokes cigarettes and drinks black coffee, so nobody knows if she actually poops or not. But I can guarantee you that all of the people you have in mind who are these incredible, wonderful human beings who've gone on to create incredible work, none of them actually reinvented the wheel. They all managed to get past that level of being afraid that they weren't truly unique or individual enough. And so the lesson is fighting this sense of creative cannibalism, because if it's holding you back from actually getting a project started, it's not worth it. And everyone poops. Cool. So, number 2, sex. There is, this is supposed to be like that, I promise. I'm not that bad. There is something really interesting that when we think about why so many of the things that we think of as being taboo are related to sex. And there's something that we can learn from this, because even with the campaign that's going on at the moment for the rainbow beer, it is objectively absurd that in 2017 people think that marriage or love has anything to do with the 2 people involved being of the correct gender balance. From an objective perspective, that is absurd. The idea that homosexuality is taboo comes from such an archaic, old place the idea that period sex, anal sex, so many of these things are taboo. There are very few exceptions, one being incest, two arguably bestiality, and those things come down to issues of consent. But at the heart of it, almost every single sexual act that could possibly take place between two consenting adults that doesn't harm anyone else is taboo for literally no good reason. And so I want to speak about the idea of sex being taboo as more of a concept to question authority. And so for the perfect example I have is like, what's this? Who knows? Pixels. It's a nipple. I have 2 of these. Some of you have 2 of these. Some people could stand up here and show their 2 of these, but I cannot. If someone stood up here and that someone was this person, are you clicking or am I clicking? I'm doing that. Okay. If someone stood up here and it was this person, they could show their 2 nipples. But if someone stood up here and it was this person, they could not show those 2 nipples. The absurdity is like right up here. And the lesson that we can all learn from that I think we can take not only to our creative pursuits, but to all areas of our lives, is the question, wait for this animation, are you ready? Says who? Yeah. Spectacular. But in all seriousness, this is something that I've only sort of decided is a bit of a mantra alongside everyone poops in the last 6 months of my life, which is that if you're doing something a little bit different, and Australia's really heinous with tall poppies, and especially Brisbane's really bad with creative tall poppy syndrome, people are going to tell you that you can't do things, or that you shouldn't do things, or even if you just have like a little bit of a kooky new idea because you thought you were spitballing in a safe environment brainstorming, and they like give you a bit of a funny look. The thing that we can learn from the absurdity that so many sex acts are still taboo for no good reason is to always ask when you have a naysayer, even if it's outright or if it's even a little bit subtle, says who? Question that sense of authority. Who are they to say that you can or cannot do that, or if that is a good or bad idea? So, a list of some very stupid things real people have actually said to my face. To which I wish all of these things happened before I came up with this great new says who thing. But this is my chance to be like, says who? Retrospectively. You can't even read these. Print is dead. Well, I keep selling out of my print magazine, so get fucked. Yeah. If you were any taller, you'd fall over. The person that said that to me was, like literally, stupid things that people have said to my face. The person that said that was like a relatively short, significantly overweight, balding barrister who I used to work in their chambers, and I just stood up from behind my desk and startled him. I don't think you girls understand what's involved. This was something that was said to Anna and I by the people who we were paying good money to print issue 1 of our magazine, and we told them that we wanted to pay them to print the sheets, and then we would take it, and we had timed it perfectly so that we had over a week to go and bind it ourselves so that we could like save money, and we had this cool like DIY idea for how we would bind it. And they like dragged out the printing process so that, whoops, now we don't have time to bind it ourselves because they found out when our launch party was and made us pay them for perfect binding. That was hundreds of dollars extra. And their reasoning was to take us aside and be like, you girls think you can do this? I don't think you understand what's involved. Where did y'all go? There's more. Okay, this is a good one. You're almost as beautiful when you're not wearing any makeup. Said to my face. I have since forgiven the person that said this because I'm not going to go into big conspiracy theories, but literally the beauty industry makes billions of dollars every year about making women feel shit about themselves. It's fine. We should all be worried about the feminization of the legal profession. Literally said to my face. You don't know how to stop spending, that's the only reason you'll never be able to afford a house. Classic, we've all heard this one. This is a really good example when you go, says who? Because most of the people who says who to this are people who like cling to negative hearing like it's that one really fancy lifeboat that came off the Titanic. If you care about money and getting paid, you shouldn't have quit law and started writing. This happened to me 2 weeks ago. I had filed a 4,500 word essay with a very notable publication, and the editor came to me and tried to pay me $0. If you care about money, if you care about money and getting paid, you shouldn't have quit law and started writing. Says who? Says the man who, after I went law on his ass, had to pay me $1,000 for that invoice. Get fucked. Women who pre-book into hospitals to get C-sections are selfish. Says who? Clearly someone never gonna have to have a baby. What do you mean you're going to be a writer? You can't make money from that. This point comes last because what I want you all to feel comfortable with the idea is that you can't always go, fuck you, to someone who's standing in front of your face. What you can go is when they say something really shit, like you can't be a writer, you can't make money from that. When you go, says who? What you're really saying to them is, you are not special. You do not have special knowledge about the universe that I do not. When someone goes, you can't do that, you won't make any money, and you go, says who? What you're really saying is, I probably didn't ask for your personal opinion on this matter, and your personal opinion is no more than that, a personal opinion. And my favorite, and the absolute final point that I will say is that when you go, says who, when you question just that flicker, that moment that someone is somehow has this objective universal knowledge and says to you, you can't do that, yeah, good luck with that, there's no way you're going to do that. And you go, says who? What you're really saying is, fuck you, watch me. And so when I think about what we can learn from the fact that so many sex acts are still taboo and how archaic and pointless that is, I think that there are so many areas that we can all question authority in our daily and creative lives. All right, death. Oh, are you ready for this? My man Benny F. Oh wait, no, it had a... What is this? Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh, I finally figured out how to make it work. I was clicking back instead of forward. All right, here we go. My man Benny F, you ready? Oh! I just wanted to make the point that I didn't make this. Death, the third and final part of my speech. Gets a little bit serious. I know, wacky. So, the reason I'm talking about death is because it is the biggest and greatest final taboo. And it is, again, like many taboos, and even as they said in the introduction, so many taboos still exist for absurd, archaic reasons. There is literally nothing more certain than all of us being here that at one point in time, hopefully not too soon in the future, all of us will die. The reason that that is sad and the reason it makes us uncomfortable to think about that, logic would follow, is inherently that we value what we currently have here. And I am of the belief that if we were able to speak and think more openly and clearly and with enough perspective about the fact that we're all going to die, the only thing that can come of that is more perspective and capacity to enjoy what we have here and now. And the reason I think this is that within the last 12 months, I had one experience where I believe that I nearly died, and I also had a close member of my family die. And at both of those points in life, there was immense sorrow and a lot of questioning that comes from that process. But what I also remember with absolute clarity is a sense of clarity, a sense of perspective that can only come when we acknowledge that what we currently have and what we currently enjoy is temporary. So the reason I'm talking about this is because people love hearing me talk about why I quit law and decided to follow my dreams. Radio National invited me to go on the radio when I'd first quit, and I think they thought I was gonna tank, and they asked me to do this regular slot where I would go in and tell them about how my wacky life change had happened. And then after the second time I went on, they realized that I was quite successful and so cancelled it because they were like, oh, this isn't interesting, you haven't failed and fallen on your ass. But the thing that people ask me all the time is how I knew that I could make that change. Why I had spent 6 years in my law degree and then a year in the profession and gone through the process of PLTs to get admitted and then just drop it all. And it was a series of events that led me to realize that what we have here is so fleeting. And it sounds like this absurd thing, and it's not special knowledge that I have, but I think the reason we don't all think about it much more regularly and frequently is because death is still taboo, because it makes it difficult for us to lead really just like, not boring, but like everyday lives if we don't keep that perspective. And so there's this saying that gets thrown around a lot of like, live every day that it's like it's your last. That's really stupid. That's not what I'm trying to say. My point is that when we embrace what it means to be mortal and what that looks like as human beings, there is so much clarity and perspective that can come from that space. And for me personally, having to push through the period of discomfort of having someone pass away or feeling like I nearly passed away led to a whole new perspective on life. And since I was able to put my goals and my priorities into that perspective, I've been significantly more successful and significantly more happy than I ever could have before I just kept trucking on with this idea that life would just keep going and making other people happy. And so it's a bit serious, but it's the biggest taboo and it's really stupid. In a realistic sense, I think this is a side point, but it's even absurd that the way we give care, what are those doctors who care for people right before they die? Yeah, palliative care, exactly. So when my grandmother was passing away last year, my grandparents just rejected the premise of engaging a palliative care doctor because they thought that that would be like acknowledging the end or like admitting defeat, and that somehow that would bring death sooner, when actually I've since gone and spoken to some palliative care doctors who say that people can work with palliative care doctors for well over 5 years before they end up passing away, because it's all about acknowledging what you have here and making the best of the here and now. And so I feel like this weird taboo about death is like really harmful to people and to society. Here's a quick visual representation of my relationship with the legal industry once my book comes out. I don't know how to say this without sounding really fucking lame, but in the last 12 months, through those scary and uncomfortable processes, I realized that I'm not afraid of dying. I just really don't want to. And as soon as you realize that, you're so much more ready to burn bridges that have nothing to offer you and only hold you back. Yeah, it's really lame, but I think it's really true. And so that's it. Cannibalism, creative cannibalism, bad. Sex, why are things taboo? Also, for the record, I thought that this purple one was like two ladies going down on each other. I didn't want all the sex images to be that hetero, but then someone was like, oh no, the outlines are different colors, it means one's a man and one's a woman. I was like, oh no. And death. Oh, I'll fuck this up again. Thank you. And finally, I just wanted to say a big thank you and remind everyone that I am not Hot Chicks with Big Brains alone. Hot Chicks with Big Brains are these beautiful people. One last. Super quickly, so left to right, Anna, who you heard from this morning, is our incredible art director and assistant manager. And then Emma, where's Emma? Yay, Emma! Emma's our blog manager. Yen Rong runs our Twitter and our brand new e-newsletter that you should all sign up for. And also, someone this morning bought the very last normal copy of issue 2. So there are like 6 or 7 special edition copies left, and then we are like legit sold out of issue 2. So yeah, we're like selling them over there, and then we're also screen printing the dust covers that will be on issue 3, so you can like go and pull one and pre-order it if you want. So thank you very much, everybody.